And we're live. Welcome to another episode of the New York Information Security Meetup. I have the great pleasure to introduce Kyriakos Rock Lambros, who is the CEO and founder of RockCyber. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, David, for having me. Appreciate it.
So the reason I invited you over is like, listen, you have a fascinating background. You were in industry. You're a security professional through and through. You've done like some major roles in big companies, and then you venture into the deep end and created your own consultancy firm that would work. You now took all the hands-on experience that you've acquired through the years, and now apply that to basically become a mercenary, quote unquote, for a mercenary has a bad connotation. So maybe like some like just a consultant to a firm to help them gain trust and benefits of becoming more secure. So why don't we get started, and just if you don't mind, you have such a fascinating background, just give us an idea of how you got to where you are today. What was your first experience with cybersecurity?
Sure. So I've been doing cybersecurity since the early 2000s. I always like to joke that when I started, I had hair down to my shoulders and no gray, and look at what it's done to me. um,
I love that. I can relate.
yeah. And I started. It's gonna sound a little bit cliche-ish, but 9/11, 2001 happened, and I had the knee-jerk reaction of joining the military, and really couldn't for various reasons at the time. And so I thought to myself, I was an Oracle DBA out of college, and thought to myself, you know what, the next battle space, if you will, one of the few times I've had a good foresight into the future. The next battle space is going to be this thing called the internet. And so from being an Oracle DBA, I kind of pivoted into data and database security, and then went on to work for organizations like eBay, and some contract work for banking and manufacturing, building up security operations. So definitely came up through the technical ranks. And my last role prior to venturing off and starting RockCyber is, or was, um, leading the security program, building and leading the security program, both IT and OT, for a midstream oil and gas company here in Denver, Colorado, where I'm based. And that company ended up getting acquired by a much larger organization, Marathon Petroleum. You've
Hmm.
probably heard of them. And stuck around for a couple of years, did all the integration work, or much of the integration work, and then decided, you know what, it's time to do something different. And I've been wanting to venture off on my own for a while. Had a discussion with my wife, certainly not getting any younger, and it was just time to do it. And fortunately, um, been able to go off to the races, if you will.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Uh,
So
2.5 years now, and loving every second of being on the dark side, if you will. And
listen, it's not easy to be an entrepreneur, and the cybersecurity space is not easy by itself. So kudos to you for making it. And but beside that, so this is so cool. If you don't mind, let's kind of like dive a little deeper into the experience. So you were a DBA,
yeah,
right? And at the time, there weren't like too many formal type of education about cybersecurity and the different. What was kind of your first experience, hands-on experience with some of the security technologies out there, and how has that kind of evolved? To become like more focused on that as opposed to still continue that route of DBA, because you could have done really well, doing that as well, right?
yeah, yeah. Certainly, I wanted to. So as a DBA, right, I just kind of took the reins and started implementing more database hardening, database security. I don't even want to say tooling because there really wasn't tooling back then
Hmm.
in the early 2000s, but certainly hardening processes, ensuring roles and responsibilities, RBAC was implemented correctly, that sort of stuff. And really, then I just want that you know being a DBA was fun and all, but then that would have really pigeonholed me if that's all I wanted to focus on in my career. So I intentionally kind of went out and self-taught myself networking and how to analyze packets and become a packet monkey. And I say that with all deference, right? Not I'm not trying to to degrade anyone by saying packet monkey because that's how I refer to myself. And 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 so so from there, yeah, my very next role was with a little startup where I was effectively the IT and security manager.
Hmm.
So my scope went from very narrow to very broad, right? So at that time, I started picking up network security technology, started picking up some of the governance risk and compliance components. I would say that's really the first time I built a program from the ground up, even though we weren't really considering security programs at the time. It was just more something that we just throw some tools at it and pray. But that's where I really started implementing more processes, policies, and processes and procedures and governance functions. And then from there, dove really headfirst into the operations side at eBay. And well, a couple organizations helped build out a security operations center for a large manufacturing company. Then went to eBay, and where I really learned how to do things quickly and at scale. Um, right? You can imagine, the size and scale of an e-commerce company like eBay. Things were always happening. Very rapid, highly changing environment, and and it's funny because even though that role was so long ago, everything I've done since then, it's helped put things into perspective. It's like this isn't, when I look back, it's like this is, the challenge that we're facing now. It's not that hard, right? On the grand scale of things, like we could figure this out. We could build a scalable solution, or we could build a process to that scale. It's like, you know, I've been able to kind of go along, my career saying, you know what, we've got this. Been there,
Yeah,
done that. We've got this.
totally. And Kyriakos, like, what's amazing about your experience is that, first of all, I highly recommend the people that getting into space, or people that are moving laterally, like that you did, to do exactly that. Get into a role where you can do, as you mentioned, you were the IT manager, IT security, all in one. You were exposed to everything. You were basically the guy or
Yeah,
the gal to do all of that. And then it gives you a really hands-on experience and be exposed to all of it in the same time, where you don't have to be pigeonholed into a one, something more very niche and specific.
exactly.
And then so you got that perspective, and I'm sure things were moving fast at that startup, right? And then you move to a large enterprise, e-commerce platform, large enterprise, which is very, like, a lot of moving parts and so on, and you gain that experience. So that by itself gives you, like, kind of a roundabout, education to have, the hands-on experience from both sides of the house. And it's highly recommend that people do that. And what's interesting about this is, even at the time, there weren't so many defined roles. Like, it's not like you mentioned, like a packet monkey. Today I think the industry is more mature, and is like there's a lot of different roles. Like pen testers, auditors, network security, cloud security, you name it. But the problem with individuals today that trying to get into the industry, they don't know what they don't know. But a lot of times when they finish college, or they do formal education or take certifications, they're not aware that there's so many different areas within the space. So this is a great feedback. And what's interesting back then is, as well, is that it was, you were paving the way. Like, there were not as many resources there are today, right? Um,
That's for sure.
you
That's
know,
that's for sure.
so I looked at the background, and you are very big into aligning business and security. So why don't we kind of jump into that a bit and, and talk about some of the challenges that organizations face today, and if you can provide some insight, maybe some anecdotal stories, because that's what people remember, and I'm sure you have a lot of those. What are kind of the top business concerns right now from a cybersecurity perspective?
Oh, well,
Where to begin?
that's a loaded question, right? Like, where do we begin? So, yeah, so we'll take a step back, right? I
Yeah,
say, we're in 2021 now, and we're getting better, but we still largely suck at like partnering with the business, and
I love that,
for various
Kyriakos.
reasons.
We're
Go ahead.
largely we should have a T-shirt. We largely suck at aligning ourselves with the business, but
Yeah,
it's so true. It is, if we can fix that problem by itself, and again, that's the kind of $1 million problem. Then we can become much better.
yeah, and I think a lot of it is just because I mean, we hear the anecdotal, we don't speak the language, but it's true. And then we tend to operate in silos. Um, I can't tell you how many security professionals I've talked to where I just ask a simple question like, how does your organization make money? Right? And they can't give me a good, clear answer. So if you can't tell me, imagine sitting in front of an executive leadership team meeting or even the board potentially, and being going through this eloquent prose about the vulnerabilities and the threats that you face and and your incidents and very kind of tactical objective stuff, and someone just looks over you and say, great, how does this impact my top line and my bottom line, or from a risk perspective, what does this mean? And you can't articulate that because you don't know what you're articulating to, right? Like you got to know like what the organization is doing, how it makes money, what its strategy is, what are its strategic plans moving forward. But as security professionals, and I still see a lot of it, even though we read articles maybe otherwise, I still see a lot of it where we're just working in our silos, technology, vulnerability management, looking at the vulnerabilities, prioritizing them, trying to get them remediated, right? Very, very much in our silos and not getting up away from our keyboards, virtually as that may be nowadays, away from our keyboards and actually going and talking to other groups, other teams, frontline business unit leaders, finance teams, legal, right? Becoming friends with legal is critical. Even your internal audit teams. Um, I'm still seeing a lot of just, and maybe it's a function of what we've gone through in the last 15 months, still a lot of like tunnel vision and operating in silos.
But isn't that a bigger problem? Like, how can, and I'm just thinking out loud here, how can somebody who works in an organization does not know how the organization exists? I mean, yeah, do you receive paychecks every 2 weeks, I guess? But, people have to realize that it's connected, you know, to somewhere, some in the organization, it's not pro bono, I guess if, potentially they are, but let's say they're a private sector business, they have to make money in order for that to get paid, every 2 weeks. So where do you think the disconnect is? Why do people don't realize, like, okay, what, how, what's the process of generating revenue?
Because I think, we're thrown into situations where, again, like most of us grew up as technology geeks, right? So, we jump in and that's kind of what we lean towards, right? So, again, it's like staring at the tactical, right? Um, oh my goodness, I've got these alerts coming in, our SIM's blowing up, right?
Hmm.
Our vulnerability management programs. Oh, I've got to build out identity. But really, it's like, oh, I got to build out an identity program because, access controls. But in the meantime, you're ignoring all the data that's leaving your organization, by the terabyte, right? So it's, 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 I think it's just a lot of it is just a case of tunnel vision, right? And connecting to the business is hard for a lot of us, right? We don't have that background. We don't speak that language, so to say. We don't, um, we don't have accounting and finance backgrounds or legal backgrounds or product management backgrounds by and large. So we tend to fall back to our training, which is technology and process,
Hmm.
not necessarily strategy and vision and alignment, and then connecting those dots from the highest levels of the organizational strategy, and connecting those dots all the way through to how we can enable that strategy.
So when you, let's say, you get a new client and you meet them for kind of the first time, and it doesn't matter so much, and you don't have to kind of, bring in so much details, but what is it that you do to uncover and peel on the kind of peel, the onions to figure out exactly what they care about as a first step for you to understand, and then be able to protect it?
Yeah, so the first thing I do, if it's a public organization, I grab their 10Ks, right? And I go through that because uh, there's a drove of information outside of the financial information in the 10Ks about the direction and the strategy of the company. Have they had any material disclosures? That sort of stuff. So that way I go in prepared. If it's not a
By the way, it's so cool, Kyriakos. How many people do you think do that? It's so cool that you actually go ahead and do it because it's publicly available. But I can tell you, Kyriakos, said not that many people, consultants go in, an advisor in cybersecurity actually take the time because some of them are, they're substantial. It's not no joke to pick it up and go through it and figure out. And again, you have to know how to read it. I know you've done an MBA as well, right? Like
I
you've
have.
gone through, yeah, same as me. But you have to have some sort of formal education to you realize, okay, what does that mean, and figure out of that what can you absorb from it. So this is not trivial. So again, I wanted to just pinpoint this. It's
Yeah,
awesome that you actually go ahead and do that.
yeah.
Very
I mean,
cool.
how many people actually do it? I don't
None.
I certainly have talked to people who have, and then I certainly have talked to people who are like, you know what, that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
And and yes, having an MBA certainly helps. It's giving me a foundation, right, to be able to kind of tease that information apart. But a lot of us are, I presume, we're investing in stocks and bonds and that sort of thing. So it's not like we've never seen a 10K before. At least, if you've been in the industry for a few years. So it's taking that information that you're already looking at, for your own personal investments, and then kind of flipping it on its head about understanding the internals of your organization, or as a consultant, understanding the internals of an organization that I'm going into. If they're not public, I find one of their competitors who are potentially, and go through their 10K, right? Because likely, right, from
Brilliant.
their standpoint,
Yeah, because that's brilliant. I
thanks.
gotta tell. No, I'm serious. It's brilliant, and you're spilling the beans here. Like everybody's gonna now is gonna do that. That's
It's all
valuable
about
momentum.
raising. It's all, but it's all about. And I talk about this and I write about this a lot, and
Hmm.
actually working on a book about this is, and it's all about just elevating the industry as a whole, elevating security leaders as a whole to establish a greater executive presence, so we are viewed as partners within those highest levels of the organization, versus more of just kind of tactical order takers sitting there, in the stereotypical in our basements with our black hoodies on, right? Which is a terrible stereotype that we have to break ourselves out of.
Yeah. So do you? So okay. So you've gone through the either the company's, the kind of the balance sheets and the reports and so on, and then potentially the competitors. And then what happened? What's kind of your goal? How do you then take that information and sanitize it and use that in the conversation you have with the executives or the people that have the power to make decisions? Then.
Yeah, so it helps to have an informed conversation, right? So that it gives me the background to be able to have an informed conversation. So, first things first, I'm talking to my primary stakeholder, which is usually the CISO or the CIO if they don't have a CISO, and I start having a conversation about, okay, what are our initiatives? Like, what are our goals for this engagement, whatever it may be. So let's say it's they want to get ready for an ISO 27001. Let's say it's like, okay, great, that's a huge pain in the ass, as we all know. So why are we doing it? Because someone told us to. Oh, okay, great. Why does someone tell us to? Right? It's connecting the dots, and it's almost always a market differentiator from a sales perspective. Third parties are requiring it more and more, or you want to leave friction in the sales process, right? So it's connecting those dots all the way up the stream to strategic initiatives to the organization, and you have to understand what those strategic initiatives are to be able to kind of get a sense of um, the purpose of the project or the initiative that we're there to work on versus just, again, I can help you get an ISO 27001, but why?
So that's so cool. So let me distill this. So basically, you come in typically because there's a tactical requirement, right? Uh, some ISO, whatever certification, SOC, whatever the case may be. But you come in and say, hold on a second, let me ask a couple more questions about what is the, okay, let's move from the tactical, let's move to elevate this to a more strategic questions. And then you're trying to uncover that. And I'm pretty sure that the whoever you're talking to appreciates that, even though maybe they get annoyed a little bit, for the questions.
A little bit.
And and then they say, okay, well, this guy, knows his stuff. He's trying to help me not just get the tactical, but get like a elevated discussion. And so, typically, what's the outcome from that conversation? What do you leave with, after you have this conversation?
So the outcome is usually a better idea. Well, either a better idea of where the disconnect is between the initiative and between the tactical initiative and the strategic initiative, um, or the outcome is getting that conversation with the senior executives about, hey, this is why I'm here, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it. Do I understand it correctly? And getting that validation from above. But I think just going in and keeping my head down and doing a project, so to speak, never get that visibility, never get uh, that invitation into those executive leadership meetings. As a function of whatever it may be, ISO or SOC 2, or just help me build a security program. You're establishing. You need to establish a steering committee. That steering committee needs to involve people outside of just security and IT, and from various business units. Um, Presumably the champion of that steering committee is going to be a C level, not the CIO or CISO, CFO, COO. Smaller companies, maybe the CEO even, because you've got to be able to have risk based conversations, and IT and security don't own um, business process risk, right? They don't own security. Certainly doesn't own much risk across the organization. We identify it, we help distill it, elevate it, um, put it in terms that presumably the business can understand, to make a decision on whether to mitigate the risk, accept the risk, or transfer the risk, or just totally avoid the risk altogether. But security should not be making those decisions, right? Security should be enabling those conversations uh, for those decisions to be made. And, um, you know, getting being able to form that group in that process requires the trust that you've done your homework up front, that you're not just reading off a vulnerability management report and boom, there's your risk register, right? That you've actually done your homework and distilled the cyber risks to risks that actually impact the organization.
Mhm. And what type of so I'm assuming again, not always the conversation is smooth sailing, you know. I'm assuming there's some cases where they're going to say, listen, you know, we have a budget, we have some timelines, this is what we want to do, you know. Yeah, we know there's a bigger picture, we're fully aware of that, and we want to get there but not now. You know, how do you deal with these type of pushbacks, you know, when you're dealing with the kind of the stakeholders, and then also tell me, and it's kind of two-part questions. um, do you find that there's a certain DNA for a company to be more receptive than others, depending on you know who they are? And are you smiling? Because and again, and just so you know, and the people in the audience is completely unscripted. So Kyriakos is doing a phenomenal job here answering those tough questions. So go ahead. Sorry.
So you know what? I find I get little pushback because um, inevitably my stakeholder, usually again the CISO or the CIO or people in those equivalent roles, have been trying to do the same, right? And for whatever reason, have not either had the executive presence or been able to get into some of those meetings or to be able to establish a steering committee, right? Because culturally the organization is like, well, that's just a security is just it's an IT problem. Just handle it. As the one of the best things about being a consultant, in my view, is I I say the same damn things now. The same words come out of my mouth now as they did when I was leading a security program. But now I'm the external third party, so I'm an expert. So
Love that.
so people tend to listen more because I'm a third party expert. And if you guys are seeing this, I'm putting expert in air quotes for a reason.
I'm
And
gonna I'm gonna maximize you. Do this again.
yeah, expert. So so my stakeholders use me as an advocate, right? And from that perspective, I'm able to validate some of the things that they've been trying to do, and then we get more traction with regards to establishing the steering committee. And I just say frankly, it's like, hey, listen, we've all said that you want to do this thing. I'm gonna use ISO as an example. We've all said you want to do ISO. Well, there's a lot of like management oversight and risk management requirements in ISO. Like we've got to get this steering committee together, and we could meet quarterly, right? Not weekly or monthly, if we put that in our policy. But we've got to do it, and so it's using the compliance hammer a little bit. But again, we've established that it's a strategic initiative that you want to do this, and now that you want to do this, here are the requirements for doing it. So, are you in or not? And um, more often than not, right, because they've been hearing that already from their CISO or CIO, now the third party expert has come in and validated that, we tend to get more traction. And then I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question? Oh, the DNA.
Yeah, the DNA. Because and again, I'm just this is just a suspicion of mine that you know certain companies react differently to this type of initiative, and just from your experience.
Yeah, so it is interesting. So I find my sweet spot with regards to because I've worked with companies from a two-person startup to global 100s, right? And I've been blessed in the fact that I've been able to work with such a large range of organizations. I think I find the sweet spot of companies who are mature enough yet agile enough to be able to make substantive changes like that, or like that medium enterprise size companies, right? Call it 1,500 to 2,000 people, billion-ish, 500 million billion-ish dollar range in revenue, right? They've got enough funds to do something, and yet they're still agile enough from a culture perspective to be able to move and pivot, right? Large enterprises, like doing engagements with them is fun as well. Um, but trying to you're trying to steer the Titanic around a glacier sometimes, right? That's how agile they are. Um,
You should put
so
quotation mark there too when you say agile.
agile. Yeah, I don't mean agile methodology. I just
Yeah,
mean their ability to
steer.
enact change and steer, right? So yeah, and and it also depends on the industry. If the industry is highly regulated, or they think it's going to be highly regulated, like I have a couple fintech clients, financial technology clients. They jump much more quickly, right? Because that's core fundamental to their business, as opposed to startup SaaS that is. Um, Not really. I mean, none of their clients are particularly in a regulated industry or anything like that. Then their desire for an improved security program comes strictly around the protection of their clients' data and reputation, right? So it's also about how your messaging, right? Understanding your audience for your messaging.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, maybe like a success story, something that you come through and you really felt like that there was, you made an impact, through that engagement. And then maybe if you can share, something like a project that didn't go so well, and maybe like pinpoint, something you learned from it. Because listen, your experience is phenomenal. And I'm sure that since you've kind of ventured the deep end, it's like dog years, right? You've done more of these in a short period of time. So now you're smarter, and every, project that fail or don't quite succeed, you learn from that as well, and then you can apply that. So maybe some gems on from a success and then from a failure perspective.
Yeah. So I think one project that comes to mind is I was servicing. I was servicing. I was working with an organization that services
Mhm.
the electric power grid industry, right? Power, data centers, that sort of stuff. And um, they had some operations as well, like operational technology requirements as well, because they had some kind of manufacturing within their environment. But so walked in. It was a new CIO brought me in. The CIO had suspicions that some sensitive data had left and was leaving the organization. Um, but they brought me in to effectively do a maturity assessment at the baseline their security program, because now they were starting to fall under some of the new NERC SIP supply chain requirements. So they brought me in to do a baseline of their security program, uh, to discover and analyze, identify and analyze risks, and to be able to communicate that back to the board. So able to do so, right? I was able to act as the third party again expert, and then leverage the CIO being the new guy as well. So play the new guy card, and like we kind of went in and tag teamed and saying, hey, we're here to baseline our program, understand your business processes. The CIO is trying to um, get up to speed on the business and various business processes, and to identify um, areas where you may need help in, right? So in other words, we're here to help, not we're here to evaluate and assess and all the things where people could tend to be defensive. And so we were able to get meetings with pretty much everyone from operations to finance to legal to HR, accounting, whatever. So we unfortunately confirmed the CIO suspicions that some sensitive data had left the organization. Um, but then also, we were able to work with operations, right, to start securing a lot of their processes, um, SCADA, operational, cyber physical type of stuff, and then work with IT, right, because IT was providing a lot of those services to the operations guys. but there was a kind of a friction between the operations guys and the IT guys that we were able to fix along the way because again, we were able to hit on some quick wins. There's like, wait, you mean you've got terrible connectivity at this uh, operations plant over wherever it was, Southern California somewhere? Well, we can fix that, right? It's a relatively high connected area, and but just by identifying a pain point like that, that's not a security problem necessarily, certainly an IT problem, um, and taking action on that opened a lot of doors, right? Especially on the operations side. So long story short, we were able to develop a risk register that included both IT and OT. We were able to take that to the board, and because we already had those relationships built and buy-in from the various business unit leaders about the risks that we identified, and because we formed that steering committee, so as a group we were able to prioritize them and agree on action plans or remediation plans. We presented a budget and got pretty much everything that we asked for. So that was a huge success.
So cool. So let me distill some of the points that I think it's worth distilling. And I'm not sure if everybody's going to rewind back and forth, but I can tell you. So a couple things. One is you play the new card, the new guy card, and then you leverage that to go in and meet everybody. Get kind of the buy-in,
Yep.
so and then have them be part of the the larger picture, larger solution initiative, and so on. So that's number one. So that's playing the new card is always good, I
Yep.
think. and,
Especially
and
when you have a partner like with the CIO who is the new guy, right? So you're kind
right.
of tag teaming it, right? Shepherding it all along.
Yes, exactly. And you are able to uncover a quick win, basically uncover a problem and quick win, which again resulted in some sort of buy-ins. In this particular case, it was a connectivity issue, which was an IT problem, but had implications on the kind of cybersecurity side.
Yep.
So that by itself, again, showing, again, not trying to boil the ocean, but providing that quick win, and then showcasing that to the other members, that allows you to be successful there later on when you come over and presented the board an overall solution buy and so on. So there's some key elements for success here, which I think you leverage quite well. Awesome. So the other story.
Good story. Yeah. So I mean, on
You
the
don't have to, Kyriakos. It's up to you.
oh,
Again, it's
okay.
unscripted.
Oh no, no. We learn more through our failures than our successes, right? And I think for me, one of my biggest learning moments was I mentioned this was even before consulting. I mentioned um, earlier that I had built and led a security program for an oil and gas company here in Denver, and then we got acquired by a larger organization, right? So scrappy Fortune 1000 oil and gas company, behemoth Fortune 25 company that had been around 100 years, right? Definitely some cultural mismatches there between approaches, methodologies, technologies used, all that kind of stuff. Um, and there was as part of the integrations, there was a lot of talk whether or not we were going to fully integrate with the parent company. I already mentioned it was Marathon Petroleum. Whether or not we were going to fully integrate or be kind of like left as a standalone unit, going back and forth. Um, they had this was a um, they had established an enterprise standard for a particular SIM platform. We were actually uh, at the time the acquisition was announced, we're actually trying to move off of their enterprise standardized SIM platform because of the issues that we were having with it. Um, we did our cost benefit analysis why that SIM platform didn't work for us. cost benefit about the new proposed SIM platforms that we wanted to bring in. All of it kind of jived, right? All of it made sense from a cost benefit perspective, everything. And it was, one of those stakes in the ground that we were setting, saying, hey, we still want to maintain our autonomy. Um, and in the end, they just came in and said, tough, it's our enterprise standard. You're gonna use this,
Mhm.
right? And so I think what I learned most from there is, um, you know, there was really no reason to play hardball other than I think it was an ego problem, frankly, um, for me and the rest of my team. Like we wanted the one thing that we were going to hold on to, because of the history that we had with the platform that they were on. We knew it was a bad idea for us, um, and there was an ego problem, and frankly, not aligning with the overall strategic vision of a unified platform where we can leverage resources across both organizations because we had a common body of knowledge, um, and all the benefits of actual standardization provides. And so what I learned there is like, hey, like we have a lot of big egos in our industry, right? And it's not, for me, like the ego thing is not worth it. Like it is what it is. Once a decision is made, roll with it, go with it, and adapt, right? And you'll figure out. And guess what? We're still here. The world didn't end, right?
I
So
love that. So that's a. I mean that by itself, it's actually not. I mean, of course, it's applicable to what we do in our industry, but it's put your ego aside. It's that's a valuable lesson and advice to other areas in life as well.
yeah, a little
So
bit of
highly,
ego and humility will go a long way.
yeah, absolutely. Um, s-
Little ego, a lot of humility will go a long way.
so Kyriakos, before we part ways, because we're running out of time,
Yeah,
and it's been an absolute pleasure. Um, I wanted to ask you this. So we are. This is, cybersecurity is a matter of national security. I mean, we kind of let's tie back to September 11 and so on, and we can see that the pipeline is starting to impact us as individuals living in this country.
yeah.
What we collectively, as individuals and cybersecurity professionals, do to make things better, and then if you can like provide and there's no quick fix, but provide like one or two like insights to enterprise, the people, your potential clients, and so on. What can they do to potentially protect themselves a little bit better, and make like the best impact with the least amount of trouble.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing, right, for both of us. It's just a matter of, or both of those groups that you just mentioned. It's just a matter of your perception of it, right? So from the security professional standpoint, ensure that we are spending money and resources on the right things at the right time, right? And then from the enterprise leadership perspective, the same thing, right? Now, we as security professionals um, need to be able to connect those dots to the top to make sure that the reality aligns to our expectations of, are we spending the right money and the resources on the right thing at the right time, right? And that comes to sometimes very difficult risk-based conversations, and sometimes even some difficult conversations around, um, we tend to internalize our cybersecurity programs, right? Like, we just sit there and be like, I can't believe they're not addressing this risk over here or whatever, because we haven't been integrated into an overall enterprise risk management program. Well, guess what? The CEO has got to worry about financial risk, credit risk, operational risk, reputational risk, market risk, all those other things. And cyber risk is just such a small part of that, right? So, um, again, from both sides, are we spending the right money on the right things at the right time. And sounds simple, but much easier said than done.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thank you very much for taking time. It was awesome to get a glimpse to your professional world and get some insight from your vast experience. It's been tremendous, and I think we got some I know we got some pretty significant takeaways from this conversation. So I love that. What's the best way for people to reach out to you if they need advice? Hire your services, just whatever the case may be. What's the easiest way for them to do that?
Thank you for that. The easiest way is just on LinkedIn, right? So, Rock Lambros on LinkedIn, you'll find me instantly.
Awesome. So, and then listen, things are starting to open up. Hopefully, some of your customers are in the New York City areas. I'm rehosting and starting to come back into physical events. My next one is August 3rd. Love to host you if you come out this on the East Coast. I'll host you in person if that ever possible. We're going to host these once a month. So, love to have you. Again, tremendous insight. Love your background.
I will definitely take you up on that. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it. I know for the people who may be listening to this later, we're coming into the 4th of July holiday. Have a great 4th of July holiday. Be safe.
Yeah, likewise. Take care, all. Thanks all for joining.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye.